All right, everyone, let's talk China. I mean, it's the market, right? Huge economy, tons of potential customers. You hear all these stories about businesses making it big over there.
It's definitely tempting. The potential in China is undeniable. But there's also a reason you don't hear about every business succeeding there.
Exactly. It's not just about having a great product. You have to navigate a whole other world of regulations and cultural nuances, especially when it comes to employing people. And that can be a make or break situation for your expansion.
That's where things get tricky. A lot of companies go in thinking they can just apply the same HR practices they use elsewhere. And that's when they run into problems.
So what are we talking about here? What are some of the things that might surprise businesses about Chinese labor laws? Give us the insider scoop.
Well, one of the biggest shocks is how difficult it is to let someone go. Even if it's just not working out, job security is really strong in China. You can't just terminate an employee without a rock-solid, documented reason.
So no more "we have to let you go" conversations. You need a whole legal case built up.
Pretty much. There are strict procedures and potential severance payments that can be really costly if you're not careful, and that's just one example. Even something as simple as vacation time has its own quirks.
Okay, how can vacation time be a problem? Isn't that a good thing for employees?
It is. But let's say an employee doesn't use all their vacation days. In China, you might have to pay them 3 times their daily rate for each untaken day. You really have to be on top of leave management.
Wow, that's definitely not something you'd expect. It sounds like staying compliant with all these regulations would be a full-time job in itself. What else should businesses be aware of?
The Social Security system is another one. It's very comprehensive. Think health insurance, pension, unemployment, even housing benefits in some regions. But keeping track of all the contributions and paperwork can be a nightmare.
You're making me glad I'm just hosting this podcast. So what's the solution for businesses that want to expand to China but don't want to get lost in this HR maze?
That's where a PEO, or professional employer organization, can be a lifesaver. Essentially, a PEO acts as a co-employer, taking on all those complex HR tasks so you don't have to.
So instead of trying to figure out everything myself, I can just hand the reins to a PEO like INS Global. Tell me more.
Exactly. INS Global becomes the legal employer of your staff in China. They handle payroll, taxes, make sure you're compliant with all those tricky labor laws we talked about, and they can even help with recruitment.
So they're like your HR department in China without you having to actually set up a whole department over there.
Precisely. And the best part, they can have your team up and running in as little as 2 days.
Wait, 2 days. But I thought it took months to set up a company in China. How was that possible?
That's the beauty of working with a PEO. They already have the infrastructure in place, so you can bypass all that time-consuming bureaucracy. And time saved is money saved, right?
Okay, you've definitely got my attention. I can see why businesses would be interested in this. But can you break it down for us? What does it actually look like to work with INS Global's PEO in China?
Sure. It starts with a conversation. You sit down with their team. Explain your needs and goals, how many people you want to hire, what kind of roles, your overall expansion strategy.
So it's a personalized approach, not just a one-size-fits-all solution.
Absolutely. They tailor their services to your specific situation. Once you got a plan in place, INS Global provides the legal entity for employing your staff in China.
Okay, so they take care of all the legal stuff. What happens next?
From there, they handle everything HR related, payroll, benefits, contracts, and of course, making sure you're always in line with those ever-changing Chinese labor laws.
And while INS Global's taking care of all that, my team can actually focus on, doing business in China, getting things off the ground.
That's the idea. It frees you up to focus on your core business goals and capitalize on the opportunities in the Chinese market without getting bogged down in admin.
This all sounds great, but I have to ask, is this the same as an employer of record and EOR? I know people get those two confused.
That's a great question and an important distinction. Both PEOs and EORs can help with things like payroll and compliance. But the key difference is the legal relationship with the employee.
So with the PEO, I'm still the main employer, but the PEO is handling all the behind-the-scenes HR stuff.
Exactly. With an EOR, the EOR actually becomes the legal employer on paper. That can be useful in certain situations like short-term projects or when you need to hire someone really quickly.
Got it. And I'm guessing INS Global offers both PEO and ER services.
They do. They've got you covered no matter what your needs are, which is a huge plus.
It sounds like we've only just scratched the surface of what INS Global can do. There's so much more to explore, right?
Absolutely. We'll dive deeper into INS Global's specific advantages in our next segment, so stay tuned.
Okay, so before we dig deeper into INS Global, I think it's worth stepping back and acknowledging that China is a whole different ballgame. It's not like setting up shop in, say, Canada or the UK.
You're absolutely right. China has its own unique business culture and etiquette that you need to understand if you want to succeed. It's not just about the legal stuff. It's about building relationships and navigating those cultural nuances.
So INS Global doesn't just help you avoid legal headaches. They also help you understand the cultural side of doing business in China.
That's a big part of their value proposition. They have teams on the ground in China who live and breathe this stuff. They can give you insights into the local market that you wouldn't get from just reading a textbook.
That's a great point. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't understand how to market and sell it in a way that resonates with Chinese consumers, you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. And INS Global can help you bridge that cultural gap.
We've talked a lot about PEO and EOR, but I know INS Global offers a whole range of other services. What else can they help businesses with?
They really are a one-stop shop for expansion. They can help with everything from recruitment and payroll to tax compliance and even contractor management. Basically, anything you need to build and manage a team in China, they can handle it.
It sounds like they take the guesswork out of the whole process. You can basically just tell them what you need and they'll make it happen.
That's the idea. They take care of all the complexities so you can focus on growing your business.
And it's not just a cookie cutter approach, right? They work with you to develop a customized plan.
Exactly. They have a dedicated team that works with you every step of the way to make sure you're getting the support you need.
It sounds like a pretty sweet deal. But I have to ask, are there any downsides to working with the PEO? I mean, it can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Well, like any business decision, it's important to weigh the pros and cons. For some businesses, especially larger ones, setting up their own entity in China might make more sense in the long run. It really depends on your specific needs and goals.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution?
Definitely not. But for many companies, especially those looking to get into the Chinese market quickly and efficiently, a PEO like INS Global can be a game changer.
Okay, fair enough. So let's say I'm convinced and I want to work with INS Global. What's next? What are some of the things I need to be thinking about?
The first thing is to really define your goals for China. What are you hoping to achieve? What kind of team do you need to build? What are your growth projections? The clearer you are about your objectives, the better INS Global can tailor their services to meet your needs.
That makes sense. You need a solid game plan before you jump in.
Exactly. And once you have that plan, INS Global can help you execute it flawlessly.
This all sounds great in theory, but I'm curious about the real-world challenges. I mean, we've all heard stories about companies struggling to adapt to the Chinese market. What are some of the things that trip businesses up, even with a PEO like INS Global on their side?
Well, one of the biggest challenges for foreign employees is the visa process. Their visa is often tied to a specific employer and job role, which can make it difficult to transition between jobs if they decide to explore other opportunities in China.
That sounds really limiting. Are there any ways around that?
INS Global can help navigate those complexities, but it's definitely something to be aware of. On the employer side, one of the biggest challenges is keeping up with the ever-changing regulatory landscape. China's labor laws are constantly evolving, which can make it tough to stay compliant.
So even if you think you've got it all figured out, a new regulation can come along and throw a wrench in the works.
Exactly. That's why having a partner like INS Global who's always on top of those changes is so crucial.
It sounds like they act as a buffer between you and all that complexity.
That's a great way to put it. They help you navigate those choppy waters and keep your business on course.
All right, so we've talked a lot about traditional employment in China, but what about independent contractors? How does that work? And can INS Global help with that too?
Great question. Contractor management in China comes with its own set of challenges, particularly when it comes to compliance and mitigating risks. But you guessed it, INS Global has solutions for that as well.
Of course they do. Are we even surprised at this point?
They offer contractor management services that ensure you're engaging with contractors in a compliant and efficient way, protecting both you and the contractor. It's all about peace of mind, really.
It sounds like they've thought of everything. So whether you're looking to hire employees or work with contractors, INS Global has you covered.
Exactly. They offer a full suite of solutions to support your expansion, no matter what form it takes.
Wow, this has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I've learned more about China in the last hour than I have in the last year. But we are running a bit short on time, so I think it's time to wrap things up and offer our listeners some key takeaways.
Absolutely. Let's distill everything we've discussed into some actionable insights.
So for all our listeners out there who are thinking, okay, China sounds amazing, but where do I even begin? What's the first step?
The most important thing is to acknowledge that China is different. The rules of the game are different. The culture is different. What works in other markets might not work in China.
So no more copy-pasting your business strategy.
Exactly. You need a China-specific strategy, and that's where INS Global comes in. They can help you understand the landscape, assess the opportunities, and develop a plan that's tailored to your specific goals.
And don't wait too long to start planning right.
Absolutely not. The Chinese market moves fast. You snooze, you lose. If you see an opportunity, you need to be able to seize it quickly.
Okay, I'm getting a sense of urgency here. So let's say I'm ready to take the plunge. I'm calling INS Global today. What kind of information should I have ready?
The more information you can provide about your business and your vision for China, the better. Things like your industry, your target market, your budget, your growth projections, and your desired timeline for expansion.
So basically, come prepared to talk about your big dreams for China.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. INS Global's team is there to guide you every step of the way.
It's like having a personal Sherpa for your China journey.
That's a great analogy. They'll help you navigate the treacherous peaks and valleys of the Chinese market.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on something we talked about earlier, the ever-changing nature of Chinese labor laws. How can businesses stay ahead of the curve and avoid getting caught off guard?
That's one of the biggest benefits of working with a partner like INS Global. They have their finger on the pulse of regulatory changes. They're constantly monitoring the landscape and updating their practices to ensure their clients are always in compliance.
So I don't have to spend my nights poring over legal documents and trying to decipher the latest regulations.
Leave that to the experts. INS Global will keep you informed and make sure you're always on the right side of the law.
That peace of mind is invaluable, especially when you're trying to build a business in a complex market like China.
Couldn't agree more. It allows you to focus on what you do best, which is growing your business and serving your customers.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the challenges and the opportunities of expanding to China, and we explored how INS Global can make that journey smoother and more successful.
We've certainly packed a lot into this episode. It's been a fascinating deep dive.
So to wrap things up, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? If there's one thing they should remember from today's episode, what would it be?
I think the biggest takeaway is that China is a market of incredible opportunity, but it's also a market that requires careful planning and execution. Don't underestimate the complexities.
And don't try to go it alone. Partnering with a company like INS Global can give you the expertise, the support, and the peace of mind you need to succeed in China.
Absolutely. They can be your trusted guide, your advocate, and your partner in navigating the Chinese market.
If you're ready to explore the possibilities of expanding to China, we encourage you to contact INS Global today. Tell them about your expansion project and they'll help you make it a reality.
Don't let your ambitions for China stay just dreams. Take action. Reach out to INS Global and start your China journey today.
That's all for today's deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And we'll be here to guide you along the way.